Hi, my name is Liam Page. In this presentation, I will discuss my educational technology project called Kanji Warrior, intended to help students learn Japanese writing through a fun and engaging 2D role-playing game. So, what's my motivation for this project? From personal experience, I can tell you that learning Japanese is hard, really hard. In fact, the Foreign Service Institute ranked Japanese as one of the hardest languages to learn for a native English speaker. Their studies show that it takes an average of 2,200 hours to gain general proficiency in speaking and writing the language, compared to about 600 hours for languages such as Spanish and French. Part of the reason for this difficulty has to do with the writing system. Japanese actually has two sets of written characters. The first, kana, is comprised of two other syllabaries, called hiragana and katakana, which are used to represent the syllables of the language. Now these sets aren't terribly large. However, kanji, which are Chinese characters adapted to the Japanese language, is a set of thousands of distinct characters, 2,000 of which are in common use. Now that's a lot of stuff to memorize. How is this typically taught in a classroom? Studies show that rote memorization is still the most common practice. This involves the use of quizzes, repeated writing, and drills. It also has a tendency to be quite arduous, and even experienced learners can burn out after too much repetitive action. The question is there a way to make learning the Japanese written language fun and engaging while still maintaining a standard of learning? Before getting into Kanji Warrior, let's go through some of the related works first. Now, there are actually quite a few games out there now to help students learn Japanese. This includes Learn Japanese RPG, Slime Forest Adventure, whose screenshot I show on the right, the upcoming RPG Koe, and even simple games like Kana Invaders. This common learning mechanic for these games tends to involve flashcard-like systems for learning, where the player has to type in a response to a prompt or select the correct option from a list. None of the examples of genuine games that I've found thus far seem to include a drawing mechanic. There are also plenty of examples of tools used to help learn the Japanese written language, including Anki flashcard decks, Kanji Senpai, and Skritter, the latter two of which actually do have drawing mechanics. For both games and tools, spaced repetition algorithms seem to be a fairly commonly used technique. With spaced repetition, the software tests the student's knowledge at increasingly long intervals as they prove their recall ability for a particular character or word. This has shown to enhance memorization over other techniques. I mentioned a drawing mechanism for learning a few times by now, so it's important to point out why this is important. Studies have shown that drawing out vocabulary can actually improve memorization of a foreign language over reading alone. Integrated with a game, this could be a powerful tool to help students learn. Knowing that I wanted to include a drawing component to the game, I researched various methods of recognizing written characters and narrowed down the list to a few promising candidates. This includes the $1 Unistroke Analyzer, which is aimed specifically at recognizing single-stroke gestures, but would not be able to distinguish stroke direction without modification. The algorithm used for the Z-Kanji recognition tool also looked promising, but it seemed more geared towards matching a stroke to a set of possible strokes, versus my goal of single-stroke validation. Finally, I came upon the aforementioned Skritter algorithm, available under the MIT license, and found that it would suit my needs well. I'll include some high-level details on this later on. Now, let's go to a demo of Kanji Warrior, where I'll show off some of the fun gameplay and explain some of the techniques I use to help students learn the Japanese written language. Let's start out by selecting a new game, which explains a bit of the story. For generations, the forces of evil have long been kept at bay by heroes trained in ancient arts of combat and sorcery. This martial knowledge is codified and shared through the use of the Japanese writing system known as kanji. However, evil has found a way to steal away this knowledge from the forces of good in the world, and humanity is once again at their mercy. You are Daisho, a village scribe who has managed to retain but a small fraction of the kanji knowledge you once possessed. It is up to you to take back this knowledge and once again restore balance to the world. There is a long road ahead to regain what you've lost, and you are still quite weak. You venture forth from your home to battle the monsters inhabiting your home island, and to gain some strength for the journey ahead. Okay, so the game starts us out in the local map area I created for this prototype. Using the directional keys, I can move our hero around, and eventually we will find some enemies to fight on our island. Well, looks like we found someone to fight. This here is the main combat screen. On the right, we have the current health and magic points for our hero. There's also a cooldown bar, which tells us how much more time we have to wait before taking our next action. On the left is a menu showing the high-level actions we can perform. Taking an action requires that we pass a written kanji test for a randomly chosen character. The character is drawn from one of two kanji decks I've created. There are 34 characters total in the prototype. Let's go ahead and try to attack the enemy. At this point, we have to complete the kanji test in order to complete the action. Let me explain the UI here a bit. On the left side, we have a keyword which indicates the kanji we'll have to draw. I chose to follow Hessig's method here a bit and focused purely on learning kanji meaning instead of including the various Japanese vocabulary and pronunciations that go along with each character. At the top is a mnemonic which helps aid the student in memorizing the kanji, although they can be a bit odd at times. On the right, we have a number of hint request buttons, which we don't have to use much now since this is a new kanji and the game will help us out a bit. It looks like the character rice field was selected for us. Now when I say the kanji character is selected randomly, this is only partially true. I've included some spaced repetition techniques in the selection process, whereby kanji that the player has performed well on in the past are chosen with less probability than new or difficult kanji. Since we just started a new game though, all the kanji are at the same level, and thus all kanji in a deck have an equal probability of being chosen. Also, because they're all kanji we haven't seen before, the game offers us a lot of hints with no penalty. Later on, as we gain more experience with the kanji, hints such as character outline, stroke hints, and mnemonic hints must be requested by the player. Let's go ahead and draw the character without a mistake this time. Stroke hints appear as we complete each stroke. They will also appear if we get the stroke wrong, which I'll demonstrate later. As you can see, it doesn't have to be a perfect fit for the game to recognize the stroke is correct. Yay! We drew the kanji perfectly. In doing so, we actually get a damage bonus to our attack, which is always a good thing. Okay, now it's our turn again. Let's try a spell this time, which uses a different deck of kanji than we have equipped to our attack. The next number next to the spell names are the magic point costs for the spell. We won't be able to use the spell if we don't have enough magic points left to cast it. This time I'll intentionally mess up a few strokes to show off the recognizer a bit. The stroke recognition algorithm is based off the Skritter algorithm I mentioned earlier. At a high level, the algorithm first detects the corners and endpoints of a player-drawn stroke. It then checks that corner data with the correct data I created for the game. Things it checks for include the angle between the first and second corner points to determine rotation and direction, the number of corner points, and the location of the stroke. I think we messed that one up enough, so let's continue. Now, just like we got a bonus for doing well on the first test, making too many mistakes can reduce the effectiveness of an action. We've taken some damage, so let's heal ourselves up a bit. Okay, we're going to select our character. Let's draw out risk here. Okay, and this antoid is just continuing to pummel us, so let's finish him off. Okay, we got 4. There. That should do the trick. And we won our combat encounter. Here's the combat's reward screen. In the top left is a list of all kanji we've leveled up in battle. Kanji can be leveled up by drawing them with no mistakes and requesting a minimal amount of hints. The maximum level for any kanji is 5. In the bottom left is the experience window. Heroes gain experience by defeating enemies. The experience is gained as multiplied by the number of kanji we leveled up this battle, so it's important to do well. It's also important to note that since there is a cap on the kanji levels, players should take care to use kanji decks they have not maxed out. As heroes gain experience, their stats go up, allowing them to take more damage, do more damage, and cast more spells. On the right, here is a count of the number of kanji we've drawn perfectly this battle. If we got a perfect score here, our heroes' hit points and magic points would be restored. If you haven't noticed already, it pays to succeed in the kanji test. Before ending the demo, I want to show off a little bit of the player menu. On the main screen, we can see our current hero's status, including hit points, magic points, and level progress. On the right are submenus available to us, as well as an exit button. Let's go into the View Kanji menu first. This menu shows us the details for all kanji characters in our available decks, including the current level of the characters. Let's click one to view more details. As you can see, it shows not only the mnemonic for the character, but also an animation of the stroke order. This is a good way for the player to review kanji they haven't seen for a while, or take a look at a new deck before taking it into combat. Right now we have 2 available decks. Since the kanji decks are based off of the chapters in Hesig's Remembering the Kanji Volume 1, the second deck is a bit more complicated than the first. Let's return to the main menu. Next, we'll take a look at Equip Kanji. For each main action category of the heroes, they must equip a kanji deck. This determines the deck the game selects from for our kanji tests in combat when an action is selected. As mentioned before, it is best to equip decks that the player hasn't maxed out if they want to level up their heroes quickly. In the full game, this would discourage a player from using the same decks throughout the entire game. Let's return again and go to the magic menu. We seem to be slightly banged up here, so from this menu we can cast a cure spell on ourselves. And that concludes the demo of the Kanji Warrior prototype. As far as next steps for the educational portion of the game, it would be good to add more kanji decks, refine the mnemonic aids, add time duration as a metric to the kanji test, and allow kanji decks to be equipped to specific spells. For gameplay enhancements, I'd like to add sound effects and music, add a full story, new heroes, maps, items, actions, and more. Finally, I'd like to create or contract original art assets and support more platforms, including touchscreen support. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. If you are interested in playing the prototype, please see the video description below for a link.